Arsham Parsi, the founder and executive of International Railroad for Queer Refugee, joins us now from Toronto in Canada. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So are they both prominent activists? Why have they become a target for the regime?
No, they are not. They're not an activist that, that we know and label them as an activist. And I think the reason that Iranian regime label them as activists or other people is to legitimize their, sentence. Because as you know, homosexuality is punishable by death in Iran according to, Sharia law. And there is a lot of, always international outrage. There's a lot of, pressure on the Iranian government, and sometimes they label them as an activist because a gay activist or homosexual activist, they're trying to change the law, which bases on Sharia law, and then they're going to say, if you want to change this law, therefore you're against Islam, therefore you're against God, and they're going to be executed as corrupted person on the earth. And we believe that this is, a political act as well, because it's just followed a couple of days after President of Iran who talked about homosexuality and name it an indicator of the immoral behavior by West.
So tell us about these two individuals. Again, as you mentioned, there is prosecution of gay men and LGBTQ activists that's going on in Iran for years now under this regime. But usually it's gay men that are prosecuted, and often all sorts of charges are being made up that are not exactly just contrary to Sharia law, but all sorts of other deeds or actions that are attributed to them in order to sort of excuse the sentences of death. But now it's women and lesbians. How is this? What sort of change do you recognize here?
No, it was before. We had cases before that Iranian, lesbians are being, punished or persecuted. But unfortunately, it wasn't, get into the media because it was for several years ago. And as you mentioned, Iranian regime always tried to change the story. The famous, it was a kind of turning point in these kind of punishments since 2007, when Mahmoud and Ayaz, two Iranian gay teenagers, were executed in the city of Mashhad, and it was an international outrage and a lot of international pressure on the Iranian regime. And since then, they tried to change everything. They add up some other, crimes in quotation, and such as rape, doing something against national security in order to have different ways of, sentencing someone to death. We had some cases, like 10, 15 years ago that they used, they stoned them to death, which is very inhuman and brutal. And, but there were kind of changes, and Iranian government was involved in a lot of other issues, such as, nuclear program and other things, and they didn't pay attention. And whenever there is a little bit of attention toward LGBT rights, and whenever we, as our movement do something and achieve something, they try to stop us. And always, whenever a higher figures, they make any remark by any reason, they want to have a kind of support thinking that we don't have homosexual in Iran, as Ahmadinejad said.
We just have another minute left, so I do want to ask you what can be done right now. Would a fundraiser help? Would international pressure? What can be done at the moment in order to save these two ladies?
International pressure, especially European government. And I hope the European government doesn't back up, because they are trying to have a nuclear deal and sign the nuclear deal, and with their own businesses and benefits. I hope that European government put pressure and try to abolish basically execution in Iran, at least for LGBT people, even these two individuals at this moment. And I think that's the only thing that they can save them.
Okay. Arsham Parsi, I can only think of how difficult it could be for LGBTQ people to live under that regime with a fear of those sentences above their heads constantly. Thank you very much for being with us today and for raising this issue, and good luck in your battle. That is very just, of course. We're going to take